City of Stevens Point Board of Public Works meeting, recorded March 10, 2025.
Call the Board of Public Works meeting to order. Could we get a roll call, please?
Sure, Mayor Wiesa.
Here.
Alder Keemer.
Here.
Chris Tiffany. Is he? Didn't see.
I haven't heard anything from him either, so at this point he'll be absent.
Okay. Alder Kneebone. Here. Alder Morrow.
Here.
Alder Schuda.
Here.
And Alder Boozy.
Here.
And we do have a quorum, so we'll continue on. Item number 2 is consideration of a voluntary closure of the Park Street Railroad crossing. As you know, we talked about this before.
Number 1.
Oh, sorry, Director's report. I crossed it off already.
Crossed it off?
That's how quick I was.
It's going to be short.
Director's report. Sorry.
No, just real quick, all I want to do is reiterate what I had in there regarding the North Side project. I guess the day like today should remind everybody that construction season is right around the corner. So our contractor there, Integrity, has indicated that weather dependent, they would like to mobilize later this month. And then they'll start staging materials, mobilizing equipment, and if the weather pertains, they'll actually start removing pavement. So within just a few weeks, they could resume work on that project.
And that really just affects the far western end of Walker?
Yes, the last 2 blocks there are Walker on the west end.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Otherwise, I'd accept a motion to
Get those potholes fixed.
We've got all the crews out working on it. This is the time of the year where potholes come out of hibernation. So we've got the infrared patcher. We've got all the crews out working on them, doing the best we can. But you know, we gain a little bit every year with the new infrared patcher, but it's still messy this time of the year. We're not out of the woods yet.
Motion to approve the director's report, please.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is placed on file. Now, item number 2 is consideration of a voluntary closure of the Park Street Railroad crossing. As you recall, we talked about this a while back. The Canadian National, whose original design is what you see now at Park Street, they came to us several years ago asking for a redesign. Now they just want to close the crossing. And we talked about it a couple of months ago. Director, any updates on that?
Really just what I had put in the memo, and what the Office of Commissioner of Railroads is really looking for is just some sort of official response to it. I know we've actually talked about it briefly when Mr. Heron was here from WISDOT, and then we talked about it a little bit follow-up after that. But I guess what we haven't had is clear direction on whether we're going to pursue this or not. And as I identify in the memo, what they're really asking for us to do is just, you know, like, we don't have to say yes or no specifically on that, but they're just wanting, if we're pursuing it, we need to be doing something in the essence of saying that we're actually looking into it. So they want to see some active participation in that, you know, be it PIMs, doing some of the engineering work, whatever that is. So based upon that, you know, otherwise we're looking for some direction to whether or not, as far as in engineering, we should be working towards those things. I think, as I suggest, a PIM would probably be in order to get some thoughts from the public. We can also look at what might be necessary as far as some of the truck route changes and other improvements necessary for any new route to support truck traffic and get some of the documentation together, and that might be useful even just in making a final decision towards whether we want to do that. Keeping in mind, one of the things, you know, that they're otherwise asking us for is, if you recall, Mr. Heron was here, he had presented on the closure. There's a voluntary closure program that incentivizes it. So the idea, and still waiting to know what we're going to do, says if we do it voluntarily, there is the potential to get some funding to cover some of the costs associated with it. However, if we decide not to, that just, you know, kind of eliminates us from the potential funding. However, even with all that said, what OCR is now they're saying is they have not made a decision on whether they're going to close this or issue us an order to close it. They said that's not actually taken up until after we give them an official answer. So I can't answer that question. If everyone thinks what it otherwise is, I think let everyone draw an opinion from Ms. Graves' email that I attached with there on maybe what you think the outcome might be, and leave that. I think it probably doesn't hurt us to at least pursue some of this, and engineering will definitely take on, if directed, to do some of that work, and then we can present back, you know, later on with our findings.
And I'm going to throw this out there too. Sorry, Alderperson.
Okay.
But the way it sounds is we can be put into a situation where we're forced to do it anyway from the office of the railroad. I do think it's critical that we have a PIM. For those of you who are not familiar with acronyms, that's Public Information Meeting. That would get all of the stakeholders together to talk about what this would mean, what it would look like. And then the other condition that I think we should put on this, if we're going to look at pursuing it, not only the PIM, but the fact that there is some funds available for a voluntary compliance. As you all know, we don't have a whole lot of money to be doing projects that are not high on our priority list. This one seems to be higher on the railroad priority list, and maybe it's conditional on the fact that they provide the funding to make that happen. If this is their request, it shouldn't be shouldered by the taxpayers. It should be shouldered by the people making the request. So I would, I think we're okay with pursuing it, but starting with that PIM and then coming back after the results of that and looking for how the railroad's going to fund it. Alder Kiemer?
Thank you. Yeah, my concern with this, when it came back a few months ago, I mean, I know this potential closure could be very disruptive to people who live and work in this area, but I was concerned about losing the opportunity for the incentive payment and being stuck with a full cost. So given that the OCR could do that, I guess I would make a motion to consider, what's the actual wording? To consider the closure, consider a voluntary closure. And again, I think with the understanding that, you know, there's things to look at in terms of the routes and how this would impact the commercial businesses and the residents, and that, yeah, that the funding would come from OCR, if that's ultimately what is decided on their end.
I see Trish vigorously writing. So if I may
Summarize.
rephrase your motion,
Yeah.
continue exploring the voluntary
Yes.
closure option, including a public information meeting.
Yes.
And funding sources. And then we'll bring it back after we have the results of that information. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
It's one of those things where if we're going to be forced to do it, I'd rather do it,
Have someone else
have
pay
them
for
pay
it.
for it, than be forced into it and have to put it on the taxpayers. And if the railroad wants it, they're probably going to get it anyway, whether we want to or not. But yeah, I think the public information meeting is going to be really important, but I support the continuing to look into it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Is the thought with having the PIM to present, you know, the current truck route, any kind of redesigned truck route, or is it just kind of feedback at that time?
So it could turn into be two, depending upon what we'll get back from the public, but I would tend to think we would look at some potential options and then kind of present these options as far as what truck routes could look like, get some feedback on what the public is otherwise thinking, and then explore those more. And if, depending upon what kind of came out of those meetings, if it seemed that there was, you know, another reason to go back out and say, okay, we've done it, here's our analysis on those routes, and this would, you know, then I could see us holding yet a, you know, a second one. But it kind of depends what would come out there. If we come out there and everyone seems to agree, you know, that's what we all do, right? We all agree on things. We all say, nope, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll just go in and evaluate that, get some costing and stuff like that, and we'll come back here and present it.
So, Director, would this also be looking at closing that Wood Street crossing as well?
This would not, no.
Okay, but I mean, Park is still blocked from both ways. The impacts that it could have to the neighborhood, there's businesses there, there's residences there, it affects emergency response times. I mean, there are some significant issues outside of the truck route that need to be explored before we're willing to do something like this. Any comments from the audience? You can walk right in front of Sue. She's all right with that.
All right. I'd just like to say thank you for looking into this. This is something that is, Sam Lang, Boulder District 9. This is going to affect a lot of things beyond just that crossing there. And the neighborhood, that people that I've talked to want to learn more about it. So that public information meeting is something that people are looking forward to. The other is that the businesses down there are going to be affected. I feel like we need to have this kind of studied a little bit further before we, you know, go forward with anything. But as we've alluded to here, it may be something that we don't have much say over. And from what I've gathered talking to people, if we can get some of that bill covered, it's something that the people would actually like to see us look into as well.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dave Iden, 1008 Matilda Street. Given the fact that city hasn't been terribly friendly toward businesses, and you're still looking at the fact that derived tax revenue in this regard, I would like to see it hold off as long as possible, keep it open. It's my opinion, but as you say, you know, traffic safety, emergency, personnel getting in and out of there, the businesses affected, I would have effect on businesses. We need to promote business in the city, not try and hamstring it or curtail it. The question I have is this the Department of Transportation doesn't control rail activity?
No, it does not.
Not in regard to the crossing.
Almost anything.
Okay.
Yeah, the Railroad Commissioner covers that.
Thank you. Like I say, that being the case, I'd prefer we put it off, but I don't think here again the city has no money to move forward on something like this. Throw the ball back in their court and hold off as long as we can. It's my opinion. Thank you for your the ability to comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that's approved. Item number 3 is to award the Hoover Road Intersection Signalization Project 25-105 to Bodart Electric Service out of Pere, Wisconsin for an amount not to exceed $467,880.66. This is just a bid to put the signalized intersection in.
So moved.
Motion to approve from Morrow,
I second.
and we've got a second. Okay. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Yes, sir. Yes, you do. We have you come to the lectern because that's got the amplified microphone, so people at home or watching the video later can hear you.
Keith Godrowski, 1536 Water Street. So we're doing these traffic lights. We got tons of traffic lights in this town that are absolutely useless. Any chance you can recycle some of them and tear them down and put them over there? HH and Water Street. 4-way stop at best. Ben Franklin, I don't know why they're on more than 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. Virtually every light downtown. Maybe the one just across the bridge. I can't think of many other. We have so many lights in this town that are absolutely useless. Costs us a lot of money. Repurpose the lights if you can. Thanks.
Thank you. Short answer is we did explore that option. Moving the lights does save a little bit of money, but when the lights are needed at that intersection, it's likely going to be more expensive. So the cost of moving them and relocating them wasn't really effective in the long run. And the usefulness or uselessness is subject to opinion. I think they're all pretty useful in controlling traffic. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Dave Iden, 1008 Matilda Street. I would concur with Keith, given the fact that the lights are not coordinated. Here again, you want to save the trees, you want to save people's gasoline. You should have done a study, get somebody in there to coordinate the lights throughout the city. You'd have no traffic congestion. You'd improve safety. For example, the Polk Street lights by Ben Franklin, those should be flashing yellow and red 20 hours a day, because otherwise you're just holding up traffic, which seems to be the thought process here. I've asked you in the past, please look at a study to coordinate the lights and do this, and I've only seen it get worse from what I can gather. I drive the town all the time. I live in the city. I would urge consideration of at least somebody looking into this, because 2 lights are coordinated, the third one is you stop. You're right downtown. This is a constant. Your comment in the past was, if you drive the limit, you'll make the lights. The only reason I might speed in town is to make the lights. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, we do. We pay people to coordinate the lights and time the signals. They may not work for everyone. There's one in particular, the director will vouch for me. It is the most inconvenient light in the entire city for me. But it's not about for me. It's about how the traffic flows generally. It's not going to be right for everyone, but we do that, and they do get out of sync. That's where we pay people to bring them back into sync. Do we have anybody scheduled this summer to do that?
No, we do not.
But we did last year. I know we did last year.
We had maintenance and stuff done on everything last year. We typically do that every other year. However, we are coming due for another total retiming study.
And I would encourage anybody that thinks the lights on their route are out of sync, get the pattern down, contact the Public Works office, and when we get someone to resync, we'll take that into consideration. But it's general traffic flows. It's not necessarily your route to school or work or the grocery store. Like I said, there's one that's terribly inconvenient for me, and I just go a different way. Dave, all we're looking at is we're approving purchasing a contract for one intersection. If you want to get it more elaborate, I'd be happy to sit down with you. We'll get the director involved, call the office. That's not a problem.
Thanks.
Just on this item, though, we're approving the bid. We have a motion and a second. Anyone else to talk about this bid? All right, all those in favor of accepting the bid signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that bid is approved. Item number 4 is to approve right-of-way plat and relocation order as part of the north segment of the Business 51 Reconstruction Project. For those who weren't at the Plan Commission, Director, go ahead and give us a recap.
Sure. As Mayor said, this was presented at Plan Commission last week. I did actually mention there, if anyone did watch that, there were a few errors in the tables. Those have since been corrected, so what you're seeing here is the corrected versions of it. Essentially, the relocation order identifies that we're making a public improvement, and as a result of that, we need to change the lines of the right-of-way, and so therefore we were going to be acquiring that property, and in essence, then putting people on notice that we may be using condemnation, Chapter 32 processes to do that. That's essentially the relocation order in a nutshell. And then the right-of-way plat is just the document that identifies specifically what the relocation is looking to acquire. And if there's any questions in particular to that, I can ask questions. Probably the biggest one is like, why now? And it's more or less a matter that we need to try to get through a 60% design, because that's far enough along that seems to define what those right-of-way requirements are. Still subject to change in final design if something seems to be a little bit off there, or there's an improvement or change we wanted to make at the last minute. Could change, but essentially this should be very close to final for our needs.
And for total transparency, this does include the right-of-way access that's going to be required for the roundabout at 4th and Division. Thoughts, comments, or a motion? Yes.
I do see in the southeast corner of the 4th and Division intersection, the building that needs to get removed. Is that the only building that's being like entirely removed in the north and south? I didn't see any in the south.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Kiemer. Discussion. Comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
If, I know the north side is the first phase of this. Is there a goal as when, like, they might be able to start this phase?
The expectation is that this will start construction next year.
Thank you.
2026. You will have later this year, very soon, I hope, 60% design through the entire stretch. And then 100% design, and we will be bidding for the north side of Business 51, putting into the capital budget and moving it to spring. Should be noted, too, that when the Business 51 segments are being reconstructed, because of their ability to borrow and how expensive these projects are, no other road projects are being planned for those years. Yes, sir.
And just to remind me, the first phase is being paid with TIF money, is that correct still?
Predominantly, yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I will be a nay vote. That motion passes through majority consent. Item number 5 is to approve the right-of-way plat and relocation order for the part of the south segment of Business 51's reconstruction projects. Director?
Really the same thing as far as otherwise the north timing, we're at 60% design with that as well. Also scheduled for 26. This one is tied to grant funding through the SDP Urban program. And the reason in part, well, this, in addition to 60% design, there's a number of other things that have to be done to satisfy the grant requirements as far as the design study reports, some environmental documentation and such. So all of that is now completed, so we're looking to get this approved. We have, as a sub to AECom, right-of-way professionals ready to go. As soon as we have the orders, they'll get started on real estate, which is probably going to be the critical path to getting things ready in time for 26 construction.
Thoughts, comments, or a motion?
I would move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ebone. Discussion there? Comments from the audience? This one right now tentatively is scheduled for what year?
Also 26.
26, okay.
Mary, did he take your
All right.
second? Did he take your second? I didn't.
Mary seconded, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Hearing no one wishing to speak, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I will be a nay vote.
I will also be a nay vote.
Let the record show Dean Shuda is voting in the negative. By majority consent, that motion passes. Our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 6:55.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.